Now we're going to call to order the Derby City Council special meeting 30, and we have a quorum president. Any speaking comments? Being none, move to the special session. Discussion and consideration of resolution 2026-6 authorizing a joint election agreement with the City of Jersey Village Fire Control for the emergency medical service this year. Anybody have any questions for this item, or would you have it? This is to join the control district on its election. The to resolution 2026 for resolution for joint election agreement with the City of Jersey Village Fire Control Prevention and Emergency Medical Service District. I'll say. Have a motion in a second. All those in favor? Motion passes.
Yeah. I was reading something.
Discussion regarding the city personnel policy regarding leave and maximum payout. Austin, please give a summary once you start here. Yeah, we've provided some of the background information here tonight. We're talking about the leave and the payout for employees. We've got all the questions of the fact that they all about it. And then it's help us out what the
She's on her way.
what the end goal is, and we can make that back and bring back whatever recommendation that the council wants the later. So, really want on, but it's so I'll kick it off. I think some of this started maybe as early as 22 when we were going through as best I can remember, going through the plan, the status city, the pre-budget meeting. And there were some, there was one employee that was leaving after a long tenure, I think 20 years. And I think it raised a couple eyebrows in the room.
Yeah.
Jennifer and I, at least, were not aware this, like, detailed policy. And then when we had turnover with Lori and Isabel, it opens, there was a amendment pay for this payout, and it was pretty hefty. Now, context, all three of those have been around, all three of those employees, senior members, been around for a while, and it just so happened that you accrued and they were showing up to work and not taking a lot of vacation. So they accrued a lot of things. I think what happened was I felt most uncomfortable with the city having to make adjustments to a budget or consider that as a one-time or one-off, as opposed to it's effectively an account payable. And even though we get, we're not a business that gets audited on that, we need to reflect that in a current budget. And so I think some of us in Austin, I think you and I have talked about one of the ways we do that is at least have a line item with whatever percentage of exposure we have. And we know that if in need, we cover it, and we probably won't, or in anybody that leaves during that time, we could leave that out. Now, that's just one part of the discussion tonight, but I think it's important to understand where kind of my background comes from on this issue, and the way I'm looking. Now, I'd be satisfied if that was one solution, and there are probably others, but we cover some, not all of it, right? Because you're not going to have everybody leave at the same time. If we do, we have much bigger problems. But whatever best practices make, I don't know what that might be, but whether it's 10%, 5% of that exposure, something of that. And it can probably change every year, depending on tenure, et cetera. The other thing is I appreciate staff going to work and surveying what other cities are like. I think it's kind of eye-opening. And it's reasonable to say at the preface that private sector and public sector are not the same thing. and we'd like to be as efficient as private sector and things of that nature. But the attraction of an employee to a private sector versus the public sector is different. And I mean, and benefits, right up the way I found it. Now we have several people here who have at least worked at part-time or currently in public. The benefits are generally higher and we tend to make up for some of the salary in lieu of bonus and other things like that. So I believe that you can't compare apples to apples. You don't get a lot of this payout in the private sector. But I'm not, after looking at the other cities and what they offer and hearing, anecdotal evidence, it doesn't give me as much heartburn for what Jersey Village offers and the way, because it seems to follow a lot, but it's also, quite frankly, compared to some, a little more conservative. But I'm open to ideas if we feel like we need to make some changes. I would also recommend that if we do, we don't make those wholesale, start with either those employees with very little tenure or have not started. We grandfather in a large element of our workforce. But I'm open to other thoughts.
I think I hear that. And I agree with a lot of what you're saying. I will say a lot of this for me also comes from the fact that the city of Jersey Village does not pay the same on average as other cities. We pay better. We pay better than others. Our starting salaries are I forget our verbiage, but we're at something like 50%, wherever somebody else is, whatever the 50% is our starting range, whatever, it's something like that. So like the 50%, right, is where we have our start of our like ranges, right? For most jobs here. And so for me, that is an indication that we are compensating better than I would say the gross majority of cities. So sometimes I struggle when we do stuff like this and we get information is that we're getting information in pieces. Mm-hmm. So like what we get today is information about the payout and rollovers of vacation time, right? So we get that from cities. What we're not getting is what are their salary ranges and how do they compare to ours as well? Because I think it's when you're looking at stuff completely separated, I don't feel like you're able to make an accurate judgment of what you're really looking at. I think you have to look at stuff in the whole. So to me, to be able to truly and accurately judge something, I think I would need to see all of that information all together in a much more comprehensive way. Like benefits package. Like it kind of like a benefits package process. Like, if our salary ranges are here, but maybe we're paying out less over here. And I'm just using that as an example. And somebody else is paying way more, and we look like we're doing this, but our salaries are so much higher. Well, then that makes sense. But when you just pull stuff out situationally, in my opinion, I don't feel like we're getting an accurate idea of what we're looking at.
And I agree with you on that. And I also think it's relevant. I mean, we've got a list of several cities here, but what we don't have is an identification of each of those cities, the budgets, the size of the staff, the demographics of the cities themselves, the population, the number of households, gross property tax revenues, et cetera. And so, it's hard to say, well, these are the benefits available for an employee in this city versus Houston. And I understand from an employee's perspective, you can say, but I can work in another city. But we also have to take into consideration that Jersey Village is different, where working for Jersey Village is different than working for the city of Houston. Mm-hmm. And so it just seems like there's a lot more information that would be needed in order to really compare. And I think that your point with respect to if the aspiration is that people come in on a starting salary that is in a 50th percentile or whatever, then, the fact that the other cities don't do that is relevant as to what the entirety of the benefit package is. And then I'll say just as another thing, I mean, and my take on this has kind of changed over time as I've talked to some people with respect to, obviously the holidays are the holidays, and those are standardized with the federal government, with the banks, et cetera. So I don't have any significant issue with that. So then you're talking about vacation pay, accrual with vacation pay, and sick pay. And to me, the big thing on vacation pay is having a policy that provides adequate or a good opportunity for vacation, but also encouraging your employees. The reason you have vacation is to encourage them to take vacation, to recharge themselves, to come back to the job and do better. It's not designed as a savings instrument. Oh, I'll just work all year and I'll gunny sack my 2 weeks or 4 weeks or 5 weeks, and then we're faced with a situation with a giant accrual. The same thing on the sick pay. The sick pay is designed, in my opinion, so that when an employee becomes ill and they can't be here, they're not, oh my gosh, I'm not getting a paycheck. And it's designed to allow them to continue to receive a paycheck when they're sick and they're unable to work. But again, it's not designed as oh, well, I'm never sick, so I need to get this. If you're never sick, you should be recognized for that in your compensation. You're never out ill. And rather than have those sick pay days accrue and roll and become a savings account, it should be reflected in your annualized compensation and adjustment. Those are my opinions on those two topics. And Drew, to the point you raised first, I do think that we want to protect the city from having employees roll over and accrue or have too much accrued. And I think that has to come about by a max rollover on an annualized basis and a max accrual on an annualized basis, so that employees are incentivized to use your vacation pay, because that makes for a better employee. Go travel somewhere and come back, and then you'll be that much better at what you do. Those are my opinions.
So currently, the employees are. I feel like I read somewhere that they were not fully, was it sick days?
Sick days.
We're not fully,
A 1-for-1 payout.
it's not fully paid up. No. That's an
60%.
max is technical full.
For that one current, yes,
Single comment.
based on how many hours in the back. And then vacation, you have over if you're above the limit, that's bigger after that. So it's not an unlimited accrual.
For vacation, no, vacation is cap. And then it's what's the cap? Well, I can been in years, but it's been for 21. We've been employed and 50 years hired. Or less than over 320 would cost them up. So
You went all year without taking any vacation, and then you retired at the end of that next year. Full your vacation and go up. But that's good. We're doing the 8, 11, and 12. I think did the vacation leave item there. How much? There you go. There it is.
Is it just my perception that to go from 2 to 3 weeks vacation per year, I mean, I would normally think that would go 2 weeks beginning on the date of employment, and 3 weeks after 5 years of service, and 4 weeks after 10 years of service. I mean, I would like to see that adjustment, unless somebody tells me I'm just...
what page was that?
It's on page 11. Well, that's talking about the vacation leave policy, and that employees accrue, so they get 80 hours for 0 to 2 years, 120 hours, 3 weeks for 2 to 5 years.
So 80 hours, like 2 weeks.
80 hours is 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And I'd like to see 80 hours at 0 to 5 years and 120 hours at 5 to 10 years, and then 160 at 10 to 20. So it's just, I think that in my experience, the average employee who comes in, they're going to be there a while before they bump from 2 to 3 weeks, unless they're a lateral in and they lateral, at a higher position where their job they may come in at a higher position with 4 weeks pay.
Well, that was what I was going to say. What I'm seeing, again, I belabored the private versus public sector, but what I've seen many more employee-friendly businesses do is they will honor tenure. Like if you come in as a 5-year employee or someone with 10 years, you're treated with whatever level the 10-year employees get. One, probably because you're more likely used to that, as opposed to, having to start at 2 weeks when you start a new job, because now it's less incentivized to bring you over. And I don't know, do we negotiate at all vacation for?
What was this question? Do you have any record of any employee negotiating leave when they come in?
Outside. You won't go. But
I did negotiate it. I was offered.
Only council hired for leave.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Enough. We
Okay.
But you're saying nobody negotiates, but to that point, and what Drew's mentioned, which, if you're hiring somebody who has significant experience, they are not a first level employee, they are in a director type position. Wouldn't the compensation package recognize that they're coming from a larger city, or they've got 10, 15 years experience in the industry, and so while they may a new employee to Jersey Village, wouldn't your package necessarily say, yes, but we'll give you 3 weeks or 4 weeks vacation, something like that?
No, it follows the policy. And I'm pretty sure, like when you came in, it started at.
I think it's because I had previously been at the city.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly why, but
These two positions don't necessarily qualify because either council hired and we don't follow necessarily these policies. So to me, those don't even need to be part of the conversation. Outside of those two, those might.
If Chief Bitts was hired today, he would have 80 hours of vacation. Right. And even if, say, he's the fire chief of another department.
wow.
He's
I'm so sorry. It was after
Yeah.
you been on a plane?
I mean,
But
That's great. Got shaken up in the car.
the way things are currently written, despite
Just the ball.
department head virtually, and we hired into department head, they would start with 0 years of service because this is related to how long they've worked.
I think that's in there.
but I think that assumption is based on the fact that they get big payouts from their other cities.
They're trying to correct me.
Can you say that again, one?
She's trying to correct me.
Not this out. That's not typical negotiable item at the time.
Okay. Actually, a liar.
So you're telling me we have and I'm not talking about city council, like city council hires. Outside of city council hires, 0 employees have ever attempted to negotiate their vacation.
Ever. I mean, can they? We no.
We think it's negotiable.
Yeah. So
No.
more serious than we. I want to say Briggs may have. I
Oh,
don't
he did.
have done it.
But it's not a common practice.
But like I said, and she confirmed what I said. A lot of this is, so if somebody of this level left their previous city, they're going to get a considerable payout for their vacation. So or sick or whatever they get from that city. So they'll have gotten that. And I think that's kind of that concept of the in lieu of.
Right.
That makes sense.
Like that's why then they're okay with starting back at the bottom.
Yeah, because then they could, if they wanted more, they take it on pay. I've heard that part. Laura might have ideas on how to handle it. The other hard part is when you're hiring a firefighter or a cop, they have established the states as you have this many years of experience. But if we go hire somebody from Public Works, how are we going to decide how many years of service?
You're telling me that y'all's retirement plan doesn't keep track of your years of service if you're not a police or fire department?
No, for instance,
Yeah. So that's how you establish years of service.
But what if they don't work for a TMRS? They work in public works, but they work in a bud district. They work in a city, a county. Yeah, or
Okay.
where we do our system with diagnostics.
I mean, we place all the information and yeah, we do our background checks. So we give credit for it tonight in town.
Stop it.
My biggest issue with all of this, I'll be real upfront with you, like the whole thing is for me when we had to make a budget amendments, and I understand those are things are considered one-offs, but then in a previous executive session, we had a conversation about what stuff, like what costs could be accrued. And I do think that matters. And I think that as a citizen of Jersey Village, that is something that deserves to have a conversation. The fact that if someone chooses to leave the city of Jersey Village and a budget amendment has to happen with taxpayer dollars for that person to leave to pay out their sick and vacation, like that to me is worthy of a conversation. So I come at this from the idea of, I think we should look at considering there being some type of a maximum dollar amount that we are willing to pay out. I do think some people consider using their vacation and their sick days as a pseudo savings option for them. And when I don't believe that to be the intent, I do not believe that was ever the intention of it, right? And so when it starts to become something that you can use for a savings purpose, that I think people are incentivized not to take the vacation. And right? What do you mean? The payouts cap 200 hours per, but for me, it was more, it's not the number amount. So that number is different things for different people because it's based on their salary. So my thought was, if we looked at a dollar amount versus a number amount. And again, I'm not saying that idea, that it's a great idea or that it's fair, but I do think we need to come up with something that doesn't require there to be budget amendments when a person chooses to leave the city. And I don't think that means raising out such a unicorn situation. I get what you're saying, and I think it does warrant a discussion, and I get it. But I think this was such a unicorn situation of two people who's been here a long time, and somebody who has 5 years here, 10 years here, they did their dues. The two people that left had decades. And so, yes, I know their payout was a max of 200 hours, but they earned them. It wasn't infinite. And I think when you look at really these two unicorns, and like if you look at a bell curve of anything that you should look at for statistics, you ignore that outliers. And you look at the middle of the bell curve. And the middle of the bell curve is like your average employee, it costs how much to replace them, how much to find their job. And we're talking about, yes, I get that we had to do an amendment for these two outlier situations, but most of them, it doesn't affect at all. Where's I know where in all of this is the stuff where I think Councilman Hughes had asked for the numbers of people with certain numbers that for payout, like for what it had been accrued. I saw that, and it's been buried in all of the stuff we've gotten on all this because it's been several different threads. So where was that? Because I do remember seeing it, because I don't think it's quite as unicorn as you think it is. If you go back and look at that, I think there are more employees with larger amounts than what we think.
So Council Hughes asked for there was some people with vacation hours as of January 1st. So that was provided to y'all a while ago.
Does anybody remember where that was? Because I think that's relevant to the conversation.
Well, that's what it's on. I think it's relevant.
January 6th.
Question.
Yeah.
I think
I'd like to finish my one.
I can absolutely relate to the budget amendment, and this is an uncovered liability.
Thank you.
It's an uncovered liability that should not be there. All of those numbers are known, and they can easily do math to go, okay, if we had to pay out everyone's payouts today, it would cost us this much.
Yeah.
It's not uncommon to put in budgets, contingencies, And what if we came to an agreement like, hey, we're gonna always hold X percentage of all this liability, and that will always cover one or two people leaving, one, two, or big people leaving. And so we're not going to have to do a budget amendment. We're putting that money aside. And
You're talking about the line item in the budget.
putting the line item in there in preparation for this, so that and it can continue with the policy we have, but we're covering so that we don't, the unicorn happens again, we don't have to call a budget amendment because we've already thought of this in the future.
I think you're ignoring the cause of the problem, which is you're allowing employees to use accrued vacation and accrued sick pay as a means to set, and that was contrary to the
There's so many
vacation pay, and you allow sick pay.
I feel like that's none of our business.
I'm saying that I agree with this policy.
If they
That's a unicorn.
if they're not sick, like they're genuinely just not sick, congratulations to you. You are a healthy, young, whatever, or older, awesome. And if they're using that and they came in and were productive for the city, good on them, and they get a payout on that. Like, it's none of our business. If they come to work sickly, will they not be sent home?
And I can relate to
So I feel like it's
the uncovered liability, the budget amendment. And if that is the issue, I think the appropriate way is
well, I don't think it's just think it's just one or the other. Like if you open that employee leave report and you look just at the number of employees that have over 200, which it says employee levy available balance or balance forward. I think they're the same because I don't see anything where those are different. Oh yeah, you're right. I think it's just because balance forward is where because available balance would be is the same. If XYZ person at 300 hours retired tomorrow, that's what they will get. Correct. But let's also calculate if they left somewhere because, right, when we did comparison studies, we were below midpoint on everything, on most things, or average. We weren't like above. They had like for the PTO payout and policies, we were either the same or below, correct? Correct. So let's now. But to that, we are also at the very, very top for salaries. So one was one of the best places to work at because of our culture and the things we do. So I feel like that is also apples to oranges. That is a whole different thing. But I feel like our benefit package, when you compare us to cities, like we're what other cities do. So now, great, they're going to go find somewhere else to work. What does that cost us? And I think we're trying to save 5-10 grand at the risk of 30 grand. And like, it doesn't make sense to me for like these people who are getting these big payouts. Like if we had to replace them, it's very expensive. I don't wonder if there's anybody. And then also, let's talk about non-monetary value. What's the value of having somebody here that has been here for 2 decades? People, I think there are some perks that should come along with you being at a city for a while, or a job, or I mean, like any job. I think just like, I don't know. I feel like we're trying to save money for one reason. And I do think anytime there's a budget amendment, I think it's a valid conversation and we should be able to explain it easily. I get that. But we're competitive with other cities. Yes, our salaries are higher. That's because that was one of our goals that the whole council agreed on many councils ago, correct? Like for years. They had you gave a presentation. This was like, I mean, this is like before even I've been on here. So more than 5 years ago.
18 and 19.
Of everybody moved forward and voted on this. So it doesn't, I know it wasn't voted on. It's not a policy. Just FYI, it's not, because I had a conversation about this. It's just been considered as the general idea and consensus, but it was never something that was voted on. It was recommended by council. So it was recommended. And then I think we even talked about it at one point when it was us and we went forward with it. And I think, and this is just me and like maybe have a different vantage point, but owning a company, like, I don't know if people could understand what it is like to protect the culture
and a place that you want to come to work to, and what it means for productivity, what it means for how people show up and what they do. And like, remember I always said like half the people do like an extra job, or like they just always go above and beyond without being asked. And if they came here and just did what their paycheck just said, because we treated them like that, we're going to get a whole different output. And then we're going to have like 5 more positions that we need to hire, because we will. If a lot of them do a lot extra because they just really, really care about our city. They love their job. They love their team. They show up, and they show up happily because the culture's here. And I think destroying any piece of that is a great mistake for what?
I think you're misunderstanding you're not taking anything away by saying, Mr. Employee, you get 2 weeks vacation a year, and this year we encourage you to take 2 weeks, but if you only take 1 week, you can only roll 1 week, and you can't aggregate it. I mean, you're encouraging employees to do what purpose of a vacation pay is, which is take vacation, take time off, so you come back recharged. That's not taking any.
I'm not going to disagree, because when we did comparisons to other cities, they also did the same thing. So unless you want to go around to other cities and convince them like, hey, all we needed like everybody take their vacation and we all get on the same boat, then I mean, we're with the standard. Whether you agree with that standard, that's a different story. But we are.
I'm looking at this. I don't think you can say we're with the standard.
Are we not?
I don't see that this doesn't reveal enough information to say that there is a standard. I mean, there are different rollover levels. There's, it's
hard to make comparisons on the information given.
Oh, of course. And like no city is going to be exactly like ours, and it is never going to be. But like it generally, when you look at these hours, we are not crazy above. I'll bite on that, but we're not crazy above the standard. When I look at other cities who are the same, we're not crazy above. We're about the same. So I feel like, what are we doing? We have a culture here. We have people who love to work here. They show up big. And yes, we had to pay out 2 people who have been here a really long time, and they are besties and they want to retire. That's adorable. Actually, that's the cutest thing ever. But it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen like that again.
No, I don't think you could say that with any degree of certainty. I mean, unless you put a system to check it, then potentially it could happen.
And if it did, replacing either of them at any of their career would have cost us way more money than what this payout is. And so I get that you're talking about this number, but replacing them here because they were drawn away with some other incentive that other cities who are same, like, what's the point?
Well, in my own opinion, the replacements that we got for those 2 positions have worked exceedingly well.
We did lucky there. But they were also worth what they put into the city. And it's like offensive for you to say that they weren't, they were worth what they put into the city. They were worth everything that they got paid out with when they.
I'm scrolling through this list, and you mentioned people over 200.
Mm-hmm.
I'm realizing that I owe an apology to Dionisio Gomez, because you're the only dude over 200 hours that I have never met. And I need to meet this dude and shake his hand. Every single other person on here that has 200 hours has earned it. They're vital to their department.
Exactly.
I personally know the impact they've had in their department. And I think we can financially guard against the problem of another.
I am very confused about how saying that we should have a conversation about the accrual of vacation is somehow equating with a person not deserving of their vacation or an attack on their character. Because I'm kind of getting that from both of you guys, and I don't understand that at all.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that. Nothing you've said is making me feel this way.
Because if somebody can earn over 300 hours of vacation and then we pay it out based on their current salary divided out, guys, like that is a lot. And that is a lot of money. I understand they've earned it. but they should, personally, my opinion, they should be taking their vacation during the year. It shouldn't be used as a secondary savings account, which is what a lot of this, I do believe, comes up as. I think people choose not to take out short-term disability, and they choose to use this as the off chance that something comes up.
I mean, that's making a lot of assumptions on their character as well, in my opinion.
I'm going off a conversation I had with Austin about this. So that's something that people do.
That you're referencing here, I was talking about the sick.
You're talking about sick.
The short-term disability.
So vacation's not even that. Sorry. So, but this is I haven't even made conversation about sick leave. But I think it's something to be discussed about how much people are allowed to keep continuously forever. Because it just keeps going. I understand there's a maximum cap,
but
guys, this costs a lot.
Like 200 is the max of ours for 20 years. It's 240, 360. Like we are in 340. Like we are in line, if not below what most of them are. And so when I say the character, it's like, it's none of our business what they do with their time. If they're not sick and they're here and it's productive, then they deserve to receive that, whether it's in a bonus for productivity or this way. You're just kind of paying them in whatever way we pay them. Great, you were like super productive, we're going to give you a bonus of this, or like, hey, you happen to just never be sick, we're going to pay you out. But it's capped. It's capped at 200. And with the other cities, full sure. Like it's the same. And I'm saying it's not our job. Over 15 hours is 320. It's way more. Like we're not even on the high end of like some of the comparisons of these cities. And like, I feel like it's presumptuous to say that people are coming in sick or coming in when they really need a break for a reason of payout. I feel like that does speak to their character. I don't take a lot of actually, that's a lie, but I take vacations all the time. But some of my girls never take vacations. I roll over what they roll over, and they'll never use their stuff, and I'll pay them out. But when they come to work, I get paid way more than if they're on, and they deserve that. Some people just don't like vacations, and that's their prerogative. It is nothing to do with them thinking like, oh, I'm going to bank this so I can get a payout later. No, I have 3 girls, I swear, have taken 3 days off in 2 years. And they will be paid out accordingly because they make me more money that way. But they're not doing it because that's their motive. And I feel like that is an assumption that's not fair on them. I love you very much, but like it's not an assumption that's fair. And I'm just saying in my real life scenario, and like I pay out the same thing-ish. Those girls are not doing it as a short-term disability. They're not doing it as a thing. They just like generally don't go anywhere. Their whole body say I'm a cat, and that's what they do. They didn't come to work.
Let me ask you a question on the payout, and I'm focused solely on vacation pay. So if I'm an employee and over 10 years, I accrue 3 or 4, let's say I accrue 400 hours, and so now I'm going to get it paid out because I'm leaving voluntarily. I'm assuming that number fits, and I would be entitled, or is it maxed at what?
Well, maxed all over 200.
For 10 years, it's 200 hours of roll.
Okay.
No, through 160.
So 10 years, I'm paid 200 hours of time if I've accrued that much, but no more.
Mm-hmm.
And is that pay just at my current rate? Okay. So there's okay. That's just what I mean. I just think I think I understand some people don't vacation, or they don't like to vacation, or they don't want to be away from the office for fear of missing out or whatever. But I mean, that's the reason why a city or any employer gives vacation, is so that people have a balanced life. And I know employees who are on vacation and never go anywhere.
That's not our judgment call. It's really just not our judgment call.
But it's good for them employees. That's
time bomb.
That's
always Philip.
You.
We're looking at all these things, and we're under every other city. We're under. So I don't we are industry standard. I don't know why we're arguing with industry standard. If we were over industry standard, I'd be like, let's sit down and let's get on par with what is typical. But we're not. we're not over. So I don't understand. I don't understand this. No, I just don't understand. I feel like we're in line with industry standard. Now, whether you agree with that, that's a totally different story. But we are in line with industry standard. And replacing those people, if they go somewhere else with these type of perks,
is fear mongering. They're talking about having to replace
fear mongering. That's so presumptuous of who they are.
I know. I think that
You're speaking of their character. Fear mongering. I'm not fear mongering. I'm literally saying
I think that if you can change the vacation policy, and it was explained, and everybody who had accrued vacation knew that, hey, you're only going to be rollover or accruing this much over a period of time. You're incentivizing people. Hey, take some time off, enjoy.
You need to meet these people. You need to meet these people then. Because no, you need to meet the culture here, and you need to make more fun of it. Okay, because there's no fear mongering. No one's like pitchforks. If y'all take this away, I'm out. Like I feel like
that's exactly what you're saying. That if we change something, if we limit the accrual, if we limit the rollover, if we limit,
it's not what I said.
Well, you're saying that if we don't do what every other city does, that people are leaving. That's exactly what you're saying.
I did not say that at all. I said
that's exactly what you said.
Let me clarify one more time, Brian. I said if we cut these things and it's below industry standard, people may look for jobs that are within industry standard. They may not. No one's fear mongering. No one's saying do this or I'm leaving. Honestly, these people love working here. The culture we've created, and I think if we could speak for like being voted on the best places to work on, or if you sat down and talked to half these people and the things they did above and beyond after 6 p.m. Gosh, how many times have I texted you like some stupid little moment? And they do it with their whole heart. But because they actually love this city and love their job. And that is worth it's having a positive culture. I cannot tell you, it is worth so much more than any of this. But I digress. We're on industry standard. And so, yes, if there's people being offered some other jobs, like people will coach you, people will send you things. And if you go somewhere else replacing that versus what we're going to cut and we're going to cut something below the standard, what do you think that's going to say to all the employees? And now we're going to dictate of oh, you didn't take vacation, so that means that you tried to bank it for some other reason other than you just didn't take it. I feel like you just don't, you're making assumptions, and maybe there are people that way, sure. But there's also a few that just aren't. It really is none of our business, whether it's that way or that way. It's industry standard, and so we're just competitive. It's like whether we give 80 hours and we feel like that's fair, or we give 120 hours. What's standard? We give 80. It's really none of our business what they do with those 80, or if it's what they do with one of those 120. It's our business to look at the market around us and say, are we giving fair benefits? Yes, no. What's the cost if we lose somebody because we're not being competitive? There's that number. What's the cost of these benefits? There's that number. And I think just that, this is such an easy. We're not excessive. And I think being voted one of the best places to work and our retention shows we're doing things right. And I think it's a mistake to change unless we're excessive, but we're not excessive. And I feel like no one's having pitchforks. If you change this, I'm out. It's us who brought this to the discussion. Okay, I'm done.
Can I ask you a question, Chief? What's your take on people in your department? They're accruing vacation, they're taking their vacation, the necessity of them taking vacation. I'm interested because, you're there on the front lines with everyone in your department, and you get a feel for this guy's working all the time, maybe never takes vacation, and this one is always taking vacation or taking sick time. So I'm curious as to your experience and your opinions on these issues.
Well, I can tell you they take vacation because I'm having to fill their spots all the time. Your captains right there having to fill their crew's spots all the time. They take their vacation.
So they're taking vacation because they need it or they want it.
Well, they want it because most of them hunt and, they have hunting trips and they've got family trips and, they take their vacations. You guys take your vacations? Yeah. I mean, they're always taking vacations, and when they take vacation, we have to bring them in and get somebody to cover, and that's overtime. That's time and a half we have to pay. The same thing with sick leave. When somebody takes sick leave, we have to bring somebody in to cover that spot. So, but we don't have a problem with them taking vacation. Promise you that.
And if I don't have that list in front of me, how many? Does it break out? Is it just by name or does it break out department?
It breaks up the department by name. It's cost. You can tell which department they all work in. That's why I knew the one employee I didn't know or some part, which I've never met him, but it's pretty quiet. Look at fire department. I mean, fire department for the most part is in the 100 to 200 range, except for the people that you would expect, such as Captain Sullivan, who is probably covering shifts for everybody else and never taking vacation. The man who's made a lot of work doing a ladder truck and fire truck and probably couldn't take vacation. And so you have employees where I guess that actually brings up a really good situation where you have a man who probably couldn't take vacation in the last 18 months because of a major project that he was heading up in Kansas City. And it would have delayed or caused issues with that project if he had taken a vacation and being allowed to roll that over in the following year where he can then go take it. And I can understand that. And that may be, there may need to be a rule and an exception. And I know that in the existing statement of policies, there are some possibilities for exceptions, et cetera. So circumstances like that where somebody is, because of job responsibility, has had to commit so much time and not take vacation. But I think as a more standardized thing, if we can quantify and limit the exposure for circumstances like happened with the two departing employees, it would be a smart thing to do. I think we should quantify it. Cap Sullivan, I called you out, and I don't know if you have any comments. I'm happy to recognize you, let you talk. Obviously, you need. Sure. I mean, I don't want to speak out of turn, but we take our vacation because the way the policy is written, you have to. So, if we accrue 200 hours a year, you can only roll over 200 hours a year. When you get to the end of your year, when you're hired, if you didn't take vacation for 2 years and you have 400 hours, it drops back down to 200. So if you don't lose it, if you don't use it, you lose it. So it forces us to take vacation whether we want to or not. The way that it's written now. Either of you have come. Couple things. One, I noticed that is when I first started talking, seemed like ages ago. If we're gonna make changes to things, my suggestion was do it for either people that haven't started or people that were earlier in their tenure, so we don't effectively cause a potential, not that we're going to, but give reason for everybody to. And that is a very real thing. And it also, and I'm not going to say it would happen, but there's always that potential. Somebody has the opportunity to leave. It's all like, there's that. That said, all that, I think the way the policy is with it, and maybe I don't know enough, 160 hours in the first 2 years that you can carry over, that means you took 0 vacation in your first 2 years. And I'm sure there are exceptions, and I know there are hardworking people. And I, for one, was that guy that didn't take vacation because I was trying to save it. and up to the point that I could roll it over. And that was before I had a family and kids and married. So I get that. If there was one thing about accrual that I would change, I would suggest that we look there. One, because it affects that level, and maybe it's at such a point there because 160 hours then rolls in and then, occurs over time. And that's a big head start if we're trying to stem some sort of flow down the way, right? The other thing that and I know we're talking vacation primarily, one of the ideas I had, and we haven't really fleshed it out, and I don't know enough to say it's good, bad, or indifferent, is the past two companies I've worked for have a pool of PTO, which is sick and vacation. And I don't know how that is in the public sector, if that would be a taken to. And of course, we pay out sick days less than we do vacation. So there'd have to be a lot of analysis done on that. But like combine the two, sick and PTO. And I don't know if you could start that at a certain level too. So it, going forward, those are two ideas and thoughts. And effectively, so someone who's never sick now has a few more days vacation, that sort of thing. I did have a question about sick days. If I had to take my child to the doctor, and I'm assuming that's a sick day, can I take that in like a half day increment, or is it hourly, or how does that work? Okay, so it's not like half day, full day. It's okay. Don't know how that plays out. Just
other places it's like half or full only. So that's
I asked when the HR system was written in COBOL.
still that way from the state. We're out teachers, just living at.
And cartons, person.
They make you take half day minimum.
Yeah, you can't take anything less than half.
I'm sure those guys are probably not allowed to take an hours. But
Yeah.
So that's there. I'm hesitant for a lot of reasons that we've talked about already on changing the accrual. And if we were, I would change the tenure of times then for that accrual assignment. I don't necessarily disagree that it can't be touched, but what I'm saying is when you say 5 years or 10 or something like that, that's a long time to get to that next month. That milestone is a long time to get to.
that's what you're saying on what I would propose with respect to, instead of doing 02, going 05, 5, 10, etc., changing it. But you're saying grandfather everyone who's
here. Saying grandfather, and two, if we were to change it, I would say I would adjust the tenure factors too, because I think
That's bringing it to your
and this is off the cuff, and I haven't studied it, and I'd rather there be a lot more analysis done on that, because that's a pretty bold change. But like, as opposed to waiting 10 years for the next bump, if we were to lower the bump, waiting 10 years, we would want maybe it's 8 or 7 or something like that to make it a little more reasonable.
I will say what Simon suggested is definitely more in line with what I would call public corporate. That is that's 100%. What he's described there, I have seen for my husband for years, for 20 years of work. That's very much what that is. So to give credit to where he's coming from.
Yeah, no, exactly.
And I understand the conversation of like, this is different. And I totally understand this is different. I would go so far to say is I struggle to look at this and understand how it can be applied as a blanket scenario to the administrative style jobs versus public works jobs versus like police and fire. Like, I think all of I'm surprised that that it's just so blanketed, to be honest, because they're all so different, and the schedules the shifts are different.
Very good point, because of the way that vacation accrues, because of the hours worked by police and fire. and I guess Public Works. I mean, it seems that there should be potentially different policies for those different departments.
Because like when I read like how with fire or whatever part of the thing that talks about how like on vacation days or something or on, like holidays about how you take it, to me I look at that and I'm like, it's hard to even understand it to me. Because y'all work different hours. Like y'all don't work normal people hours. Y'all don't, apparently fires happen after 5 p.m. So I get it.
Yeah, I think that, and Connie, you haven't been, but I think it all comes back down to we're all here. We've all spent an hour and more than an hour discussing, and it comes back to what's the problem that we're trying to solve. And we probably hemmed around the edges. I think my biggest problem was the blatant, I would say, liability, and the liability's not going away, but and it's all been public and everybody knows about hours and reports and all that, but it's not stating it and recognizing it effectively at the budget and having to do those amendments. And quite frankly, you stated it, I think, in 22, because we knew that it was upcoming and it was in the budget workshop. So I think one of the ideas we discussed, and I'll restate it, is kind of list out that liability as part of the budget. I want to do it coming up, or we wait until July. I don't have necessarily, well, I say we wait till July. I think you guys wait till July. But that I think just putting it in the budget would help a lot, because then we know what's coming up to a certain degree with a reasonable guess. I think that if there were limits, I don't know where those get, and I just offered my proposal on the
There's
60.
don't change policy, but put something in the budget that protects us from it being a big surprise method of them.
That's I think the simplest way. And then if we were to look at things, I think the 0 to 2 years is the easiest way to kind of incentivize that culture of having to take vacation if possible and limit those. And maybe that starts with new hires as of a certain date. I'm just being able to carry it over. I don't think you change the hours.
The hours you start with, but the amount you can carry over.
Right.
Gotcha. Okay.
Well, a lot of things I heard. Great. I understand. I get it. Well, I was sort of in the idea of how each department is sort of the same. That surprised me as well. I don't see why, if we're going to make a change, because that was the idea of like, what's the problem here? I was most uncomfortable was that budget amendment, and that hurt. And I do believe that they earned it and all of those things, but in the end, that hurt. And so, when you mentioned moving, and I think Simon, you mentioned it as well, as far as adjusting the hours, like how many hours instead of 0 to 0, instead of, even if we didn't go to 5, 0 to 3 or 0 to 4 or something, I don't know if we did something like that. I don't think that I think there's room for adjustment, but is there more than one problem we're trying to solve? So the way I see it is, before we start taking a red pen to everything, what is the biggest problem? Is it that payout? Was it that? Was that it? Because to me, that's it. That's the payout is the problem. If that's the case, then we can cap, right? Because ultimately, whether someone's doing it to save up money or save up time or whatever, because your argument is compelling and I understand it, but I don't want to be the judgment on that, like whether or not someone's doing that. So if the real big problem is the payout, and that's the problem, and that's it, then we can mess with the caps. and or add a line item, which wants some, I think Drew mentioned. So we don't feel the hit. And if we put a cap, if we adjust the cap, and then also that saves some money for the city in the long run as well. The other thing is, and I didn't take it as fear mongering, but there is something to say about people who could possibly leave if they don't like the adjustments. And I say to that, I don't want to see that happen. And if that happens, it happens. I can't make a decision on the fear that somebody I really value as an employee or that I think is really great, on the fear that they may or may not leave. So I'm trying to block that part of that in my head because that's I don't like making decisions on being nervous. So I guess that's my question is your concern the same as mine, which was that budget amendment and that payout? Because that's it. So then could we adjust the caps and even potential, and I mean, or are you wanting to like go through, okay, here's the like vacation leave, we're going to change this. Then what we're going to do is go to sick leave. We're going to adjust this. Then we're going to go to, I mean, how far do you want to go? Because how far do you want to dig into?
So I'm happy to dig into it as much as possible, but I think the primary reason that we're here is to talk about what the exposure is by having too much accrued vacation,
Right,
and the potential in that. So one thing that occurs to me as we're talking about it is to have some sort of standardized reporting so that the city has at least a better handle on how many employees are accruing vacation time and what that exposure is. Because essentially, not that they would all leave at once, but essentially if they all left at once voluntarily and were allowed to be paid out what they had accrued, it is a payout, right? It's a liability.
Just thinking about a problem that's never going to happen, and you're creating a whole show of different problems
it.
Because of a hypothetical. I think operating on outlier hypotheticals is, Michelle, wait a minute. In Simon's defense on this, in Simon's defense, and all these people are going to leave at the same time? No, but I work with attorneys every day, all day long, and their whole training in life is to find risk and assess it. That is all they do. So when I'm hearing him talking, I don't hear the doomsday. What I'm hearing is the assessment of risk. Then that's what I hear. That, and I didn't mean to interrupt you, but you can interrupt. Am I right? Is that what?
I was going to say that's
okay.
No, I really was. It's like if you actually don't. With his conversation about like reporting on stuff like that, then you're actually your risk is available and what your liability is. If you're not even willing to look at your liability, to me that is not being
Totally make your life. So we're looking at. You met. We looked at that. That number is in every audit that's ever there. Yeah, that's been in every audit.
I feel like that we
Top the liability number is in every audit.
So like a dollar amount to it.
Yeah, September 30th, 2024. That number was $895,000.
If everybody left the lower,
is on September 30th, 2024. I also feel like everyone here agrees there is risk and is labeling it the same. The difference is how we want to manage it. Some are advocating the policy's fine, we need to just cover the dollar amount. And some are advocating to change the policy. So that's what I see. That I don't see a difference in what we're labeling, or we all agree with the same problem. It's just the difference of how we're going to handle it. Because
I also think the idea of a combination of it.
not coming in to ask. I'm pretty certain. I don't feel like the report. I think we ended that budget year in a positive. How was that budget amendment? You're not the only one to say this, but I'm going to ask.
how is it painful? Why is that painful to make that much?
I can, it, painful may not be the right word. I think it was something that I was not necessarily expecting, and it was.
It wasn't on my radar. It kind of came out of nowhere.
Yeah, and that's fine. One should be able to put those pieces together. Oh, well, we have this because it happened. It happened to us 3 years before that. So I think that's part of it. It's just the fact that, oh, and here it comes, and we have this amount that we have to spend, and it was not put in the original budget that we had. So painful, no. Surprising is also not the right word, but it's probably a combination of those.
Unexpected.
Maybe unexpected thing that we didn't have to spend. That we weren't.
Comes along with any budget amendment of a project. When the golf course, we found the rusted things and we didn't love that.
Right.
That was our favorite.
Exactly. But
I didn't love it, but it doesn't mean that I'm gonna policy upgrade. It's just
I'm not even saying. I mean, my first instinct is the easiest and quickest way to calm is to just identify that risk. And yes, it's in the audit. Whatever our turnover is, it's low. I know that, and that's a good thing. 3, 2, less than that percent. 5% or so. 5% is fair. Okay. So 5% of whatever our risk is, if we just want, or less than that, I don't know, line it out as a line item, I think that acknowledges it. Yeah, to kind of put this into a little bit more context from numbers. The end of 24, our compensated absence of liability was just $895,175. If you want to get the right number. The payout for those two individuals was roughly 13% because of the nature that it broke. If we want to try and, I'll say budget for it, because I don't think that's the right term, but if we want to try and cover that on an annual basis, my recommendation would be to set up something like the building replacement reserve. It's a line on the general ledger that council set a policy back in 2007 about how we fund that. I'm doing that same type of thing that every year after the audit's done, we make sure that the compensated absences line item is covered at 20%. And that way, whatever your liability was as of September 30th, that when the audit's done for that year, you're covered at 20%. And some years you have to put in more, some years you might have to put in anything. But I think that'd be easier rather than trying to, if you do it in the budget, you'd be budgeting for it from fiscal 1.7, rather than just getting the fiscal 1.5. No, I'm kind of cheating. Okay. I mean, I was going with, I just took 5% of the 900,000. That's 45K. So what you're saying is it's a larger fine, but to put, the two that left, that was 13%. So frankly, you need to go 20%. I was going to argue 10. I think we can find a number in there, especially that we expect to spend some, but not all. So, to me, that's the best. Then how do we get here? How do we get here? And I can see everybody's points. The comparison chart leaves a lot that's not there. But I can tell you Fort Lavaca is a smaller city than it's about our size-ish, maybe a little bigger. They're on the bay, so a little different situation, probably higher property tax values, at least on some homes. We're less than they are, I believe, but read that right. So some of this you kind of figure it out. We need more than vacation. Quite frankly, I think it's sick. Particularly, that's probably my bigger issue. And yes, I know we cut it down, we limit exposure and that sort of thing. And I think people need sick time, and we need to allot for time away for being sick, and encourage people not to come to work when they're sick or when they have a family member sick. If there's a way we can do that, and if it makes sense to combine that and up those numbers, then we could do that. And that may actually raise our liability because then we couldn't differentiate what's sick and what's not. All days rolling over year after year after year.
That's a lot.
Yeah. Granted, somebody would have to work, like you put, certain amount of days without taking a sick day to reach that accrual. That's just where I think, but again, I'm not going to, if nothing changes, I'm not going to go home and not write up. Yeah. On the sick, I know we talked about vacation. The vacation was changed in December of 2022. Just kind of been this way since at least before 1998. We didn't find the exact date, but we found a policy from 92 and some back 98. We think it was changed somewhere between those two, and we was changed in 98. But sick has been, like, the sick accrual and payout have been the same since 98.
Austin, have you and Laura either of you all discussed or examined, whether there's any reason or benefit to go to a one PTO, sick and vacation combined versus leaving it separate?
We've talked about that.
I think we talked about that solution together. I know there's a small number of cities that have it.
It's not but a norm within cities. They always keep it separate.
Well, from what I've seen in my contacts say, well, it's not as common as having two.
And do I recall correctly? Was there something on our sick leave about not being able to assign it?
Mm-hmm.
Accrued sick leave, not being able to assign it. The only reason I ask that is I know that there, and I don't know if this makes sense or not, but I know of circumstances in the private industry where people are allotted sick time, and they're also allowed with their accrued sick time that if I wanted to assign it to a coworker suffering a serious ailments, they're allowed to do that.
It's the future.
We do have a policy that that's okay if there's employees that need help and other employees can donate their leave.
Right.
We've had that happen twice.
Okay.
And it actually got money through surgery and FMO and stuff. So we do have.
So that is a possibility. If somebody was, out, then let's take away short-term, long-term disability for the moment. If somebody's out for an extended period, maybe a sick family member or whatever, and they have to be at home as a caregiver, that co-employees could say, hey, I'm not using my sick time this year. I'm going to give, so-and-so 5 days or 10 days, whatever.
We never happened. So it's the cause.
But then going back to my original question, distinguishing or combining is not the norm within cities. It's rather you've got sick time.
Okay. Yeah. There may be literature out there in HRs or people management circle, but I don't know why businesses do it. Or don't do it. If it helps for dozens or whatever. Just like there was a trend, and I don't know if it's keep on going, of the unlimited.
Yeah. Well, it's not a thing in public learning. It's a private for sure.
Yeah.
Do people ever say, wow, this is it's kind of a dumb question, but I was thinking, what I was thinking to myself was, why would I not take sick time if I wasn't saving it for anything else? But just when I was teaching, I saved my sick time, never thought of the payout, to be honest with you. I saved it because I before reward, and I just was convinced that something was going to happen. I was going to get sick. I was going to be in an accident, and I'm going to need this time. So I'm going to go ahead and save it up. Is that's how I was? I mean, is that sort of the thinking?
No, that's like until the discussion of people leaving as a savings bank was never even come across my desk. Then I thought that I with emails employees. It's more of if something happens or we need to be out for 12 weeks or 2 months or whatever the case for FMLA, they have that odds.
Yeah. because that's how I use mine.
And no, my clinic's not because they're gone. Somebody, but I've never heard of it.
So when I was at HP, I'm not trying to compare us to them because they were a 50,000 person behemoth and pretty well funded compared to that. But they didn't have sick time. You were sick, and you called in, you took the day off. Sick for more than 3 days, call your manager and make arrangements. I don't necessarily think that's the best thing for the city because of a lot of what our workers do and that time. But I'm sure some people would be there, but you just didn't have sick days. Took it, and it's kind of under honor. And then I don't know what people did for long term, right? I mean, they did that. I mean, it's an option. I don't know whether or not it's a good one.
Laura, I just want to make sure that I understand correctly on the vacation carryover based on the employee's anniversary day. That's what they can carry over is the maximum. It's not what they carry over from year to year, but the maximum that they can have as accrued. Is that correct?
It's the maximum they can carry on most one year. So when we say that employee will technically take out 320 hours, you roll over 200, then you accrue 116. So if you decide to only 1 month before your next anniversary, you technically could accrue 300 hours from the day. So basically the max of your day would be when you could only move over 200 though. So if they don't use those extra 160, it's going to drop back down. So
Okay. So under that scenario, none of the, if I'm understanding this correctly, except for hours accrued during the existing year, even an employee with 20 years service shouldn't have more than 224 hours plus the vacation they're accruing in the current year, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
there's
Yes.
clearly sure what you were saying, but
But that's why when you look at the data that they sent over, why some people have more than 200, because they were carrying it over, even though it's January 1st. January 1st doesn't mean anything. It's from their from their start date. So that's why some people have 300 or over 300 because they've accrued it.
And
So the 200 rolls over, but they're still earning the current year. And that's why, that's why they show more. And so then that means then, but then that the hours will drop off of the year. But if they if you accrued all year, let's say you carried over 200, you accrued all year and you left the month before your anniversary date, are you paid out? So you're paid out for whatever you've accrued, not 200, right? So it could technically be 360 or whatever you are. So yeah.
Right. Okay. Austin, do you think it is beneficial in light of the line item on the audit that quantifies as of the end of this year, the exposure that unused vacation or accrued unused vacation and sick leave presents to the city, the theoretical exposure? Do you think that it makes sense to have something like a fund where for that contingency, some portion of that accrued is paid in or maintained? Does that make any sense?
yeah, I think that's what I talked about earlier, was having a reserve line on the general ledger that is the compensated absences remitted.
Now, that goes 5%, whatever that number is, based on the audited amount. Okay. And certainly no great difficulty in doing that.
Now, we've got a similar reserve line with those building replacement.
Yeah.
How do y'all feel about the reserve line?
I think a reserve line is smart. I have zero issues with that. I think it's smart to have so that it doesn't look so startling. It's something I still opened. And I do think that's smart. Again, from the very beginning, like the reason this was an issue for me or a concern for me that I thought we didn't have a conversation is the maximum payout we end up having. I think that's something that I think we should look a little more into that. I do like Drew's suggestion about on the 0 to, did you say 0 to 2 or 0 to 5? I don't want to misquote you.
No, it was the first 2 years.
It's in the
you bring over 160 hours. So yeah, after 2 years, you can bring up all your accrued vacation.
So if you cannot take any vacation your first 2 years and full follow it in the first 2 years, right? I do think that would be a good way to look at something. Because if you do look at a lot of the stuff you got from other cities, they don't allow such large allotments in the first few years. A couple of them set like charts over. I think that would be a smart way to look at that. It's just, the thing is a person can essentially be paid out almost 360 hours when they leave, dependent upon how they choose to structure their leaving / retirement. And, so we show a max rollover or a max payout of 200, or not max payout, I'm sorry, the 200, but it's not, it's kind of 360. It's almost like between 200 and 360.
Oh, whatever, 200 plus whatever your max is.
200 plus your max. And so it's just, so like when you just look at this, and I don't necessarily think it's quite as transparent, if that makes sense.
I was looking at that, and that could be another thing we'd look at. And it's everyone was talking, or several people had mentioned capping. I don't necessarily believe in capping a fiscal amount because people are different.
Like it's struck. I get
things. I don't. We do the certain rollovers year to year, and at risk of changing those. Maybe at a certain point, we look at that, and I don't know if you cap it at the accrual amount or to allow for some accrued vacation over time during that year. That's a full year.
Yeah.
But once again, are you not taking vacation your last year? Or if we cap it, they're going to take off all those days all at once. So effectively, it pays out in time served as opposed to cash, which and there's like, and I don't necessarily think that there is a like perfect answer. And I didn't bring this to the table thinking there was necessarily a perfect answer. It was more about, is there a way to find a balance that is also fiscally responsible? Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of stakeholders with things to signals.
There are. And I don't, I would also be, I liked your, understanding your conversation about like if for people going forward and looking forward, because I do think that's also a tough, it's tough to work somewhere and then something get changed on you and not be aware. That being said, in the public world, that does happen. Public sector, or private, whatever you want to call it, non-government. That does happen. So you can go to work one day and like, hey, we've changed this policy, which I know you're fully aware of. Like, we've changed this policy. Sick leave has gone away. And that happens. Like, It doesn't matter how long you've worked. It doesn't matter your negotiation when you came on. None of that matters. So those are my thoughts.
I think the line item is a good idea. And I still, with all of it, and yeah, maybe, I don't, like you said, I don't know about a cap amount, but maybe have a cap to sort of pound by hour again. Because take 360 times what, $55 an hour, that's almost $20,000 or $20,000 payout. And that's simplified, but
still a lot of money.
Also, I get it, by the way. This is not a conversation anybody wants to have. It's a very unpopular conversation to have. I also feel like it is our responsibility as council people to have the conversations people don't want to necessarily want to have. No, I think that's part of the job. And sometimes part of being part of the job, it sucks to have the conversations. But it's the same thing. Like as adults, I'm sure everybody here has to sit down and have budget conversations in their own homes that you don't want to have. And that, I want to find out, like, I get it. I understand that. But I also think part of the governance is having these conversations.
I think any change is we're to make one, or future councils were to make these, would need a long lead time, more than just overnight. The policy would go into effect in a year or year and a half or some. I don't know, for new hires. Yeah. For new hires. Or for certain people way below that threshold.
I don't know, maybe like 5 years. You're under
5 years under.
5 years or less.
This is where you're capped after 20 years.
Sorry.
Like
a graduating situation.
Right, which doesn't necessarily help fiscally in the next few years, but once again, I think we're talking the percentages amounts. It's something, it's not backbreaking. It's, what was the word? Not startling. Startling. I think it removes any startles. Startalization.
That was not, I don't like that one.
Yes, any change is going to have an effect on culture. And if you're at least putting it hopefully either 5 years or effective 2 years from now, there are employees watching. I know that. Yeah, right.
And welcome.
Orly. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. They don't like you, James.
And I
Don't speak. They don't like you.
It almost like is a good that Chris. I was gonna go.
like,
Yeah. Something.
right.
Oh,
So,
Yeah, I don't necessarily think that. Let me say one other thing, because I know I don't necessarily think this is a attraction policy. You're not going to go somewhere because in 20 years you can accrue those. But I do think to the point you're making, and we've all mentioned to some degree, it is a retention to some degree. And you don't want to make a change too drastic in this regard. I don't want to say tomorrow everybody's cut off at this amount. I think it might. Wait, sorry.
Laura, when was this vacation policy implemented?
2020.
2022?
Yep.
And I know you mentioned historically the sick leave policy. If you were to start from scratch, and also understanding there may be a distinction between vacation and sick leave policies within whether you're working sort of an admin versus public works, police, and fire. If you were to have a clean slate, do you think you'd come up with something significantly different than most? Do you think that you give thought?
I work in vacation a higher rate. So most of them I'm going to know sick, like everyone else accrues at the same rate. Because everybody eats good lunch are basically 8 hours Monday through Friday, right? So don't care your office staff, public work staff, who basically 8 hours.
Right.
We, while they work 12, they still are also clocked a lot more than an 40-hour employee. So they already have time off that an 40-hour employee did not. So they might work 2 days this week, work 4 or 5 days the next week. Well, they already have 5 days off that first week. So that's one there's a lot of difference in police, fire, public, whatever, of my crews, code level. So I'm not sure if I would.
Well, this is the report.
Because you're either a 40-hour employee, 6 every 2, or 84 hours every 2 weeks, like police, normal such, or you're 4896, which is not different. But as far as days work, versus days off.
Okay, so that's why fire is the only one that's truly different within the structure. Okay.
That's really my question, is beyond having the line item and potentially a fund for the contingency, is it worth staff taking another run, looking at this, looking maybe more closely at the other cities and what they're offering, understanding, but it's any changes perspective, not affecting current employees, and can our current policy be revised and improved? Is that a worthwhile task, or is that wasted effort from Gauss's perspective?
You're saying like rewrite the whole sick leave? Or are you talking about
He's saying have them assess and go through review it. Review. I said it's there's
In light of where we are in 2026 and this discussion that we've had this evening and the experience of when, the former director of finance and city secretary left, staff recommends that we update the policy in this way, maybe distinguishing between employees and fire department employees, and or makes the recommendation, we don't need to change anything. We just need to keep the status quo.
I will say this. I don't know. I think so. Like line item, I think needs to happen. Like regardless of any other conversation, and I'm calling it that for lack of having a better name for it.
Y'all would agree with that?
I think everybody agrees with that.
Yeah.
I do think it would be beneficial to actually have a comprehensive. And I'm not talking about separate. I think this is something that could be done in concordance with budget stuff, that where you're looking at stuff all together. But when we do salary comparisons, when we do city comparisons, it's not all together. It's not actually comprehensive. So it's really hard when we're only looking at one component. So because we're always asked to be on board with XYZ, but we're only looking at one component of compensation when that happens. Because sick leave policy, vacation leave policy, compensation, all of those things combined are part of your compensation. And so when stuff gets pulled individually, it's really hard to look at the big picture of where things really are. And so I think it's hard to look at our sick leave, our vacation policy and say, oh, we're worse than all these other cities. Well, maybe we're worse, but if we're paying in the 90 percentile compared to everybody else, I don't really care that we're in the bottom. Like that makes a difference. And so I think without everybody having an accurate picture, I don't necessarily think that anybody can truly make an educated.
So basically, a total reward,
like total rewards package, like total rewards, like compensation.
I have to go back and look, but I think back when we made these changes in 2022, I think we had all kind of information. I have to look through. I'd have to go back and look, but I want to say this was a part of the whole topic, was the total compensation.
So, but what we got was really hard. I gotta be honest, it's really hard to read. So it comes across, it's just a bunch of boxes, and it's like a city name on one side and stuff, and it is not as easily digestible as I think it could be. So I think it needs to be broken out better, or I think it needs to be better organized. I think chat needs to take an adjustment at it, like a run at it, and see what you guys can come up with that. But it needs to be, here's the actual comparisons overall versus here's our salary, here's this, because then the conversations don't necessarily align with what we come up. So like you guys present that and it comes up with, let's talk about salary. No, I think it needs to be a whole conversation versus individual components. Obviously, there's individual components make the whole, but if you're not having the whole conversation, I don't think it necessarily aligns. I think then that's when you come up with stuff looking really strange one-off. Because from what I recall, the majority of other cities don't offer a lot of the parental leave like we do. Am I wrong on that? We are by far the front runner on that, right? Which I'm proud of that. And I think that is what it should be. However, it also needs to be included in the compensation of that. That is an opportunity we have here, but maybe our vacation balance looks a little different. So we need to, I think whole package stuff needs to be considered in conversations versus individual stuff like this. And that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% on that. And I do think, two dynamics here, because I'm very big on comparing cities. So, I would want to both understand what a city of this size, this number of households, this sort of budget, how it operates and what its compensation package is for all employees. But also, I think it's important to understand that the employee who's working in Jersey Village, if you're looking for another job, they're going to look in Houston, they're going to look in Bel Air. So while those other cities may not be our size and character, what they're offering is relevant to evaluating overall.
And the thing is, it's really hard to make city comparison. It is a difficult thing to do because you look and you're like, well, number wise, for instance, let's say we look like Tomball. We're nothing like Tomball. There's a lot that we're not like, you know what I mean? It's just, I don't understand how people compare those things. Or, we're in line population with Westview. No. Yeah, and I understand that is difficult to do. I get that.
That's entirely relevant because if you look at, let's take a Westview and you look at that, here's what they pay a clerk and here's what they pay a first level accountant. Well, their property tax base and their sales tax base is completely different than ours. So having that additional information in terms of the characteristics of the city, the size, the square miles, the sales tax revenues annualized, those sorts of things, annualized property tax revenues, it's helpful to understand the whole thing because we don't have half a dozen cities that are just next door to us that are exceedingly similar. In fact, every city around us is quite different. So just the more robust that information that can be provided, I think the better we can look at the compensation package and then say, well, Jersey Village, we're doing this, this, and this what will make us attractive. This is what will help us keep the focus of employees.
Not too distant future as an employee looking at different options, and culture was the number one for me, but very different cities and offerings was difficult.
It is, but yes, and I understand everybody loves to throw out the word culture, but you can't pay your bills with culture, man.
Yeah, because I turned some
definitely correlates to productivity
because of some of the policies and some of the stuff. So it definitely plays a role. So what I'm hearing, for renewal reserve, then we're going to direct the city to revisit this policy. That's obviously going to take some time. It needs to be comprehensive and include the statistics about the cities included. And then the conceptual that come back around budget time because of how it's a pretty large budget. Their council appetite to outsource that, but that's the large. I mean, I almost thought about
I'm like that's a huge task
thing buying you, but it's like if you're gonna go hit it, maybe hit it hard. So yeah, is there a council appetite for outsourcing this compensation package set?
I think I don't know if it would just be compensation. What do you call the one where you're looking at
Total rewards?
the total rewards and you're in the needs. Like, yeah, is that what you call this? Take out. Share.
You look at your personnel, who does what they do, and we have
Correct. Like, do we have enough people? Because I do think that's valid. Because when you look at, I don't know if you ever look at any of these, like the fire and the police reports, and you look at how many calls they go on, I think that's something that's justified.
We need to hire more firemen. That's a question of funding.
No, I totally agree. I totally understand it. But I personally, and I understand, like, won't be involved in a lot of these conversations, but I do think having an outside entity do that would help.
Would help. The compensation be the same type of consultant that maybe we have to ask around. I don't know, see who's done those recently to see. So I think the real question there is there appetite? I think there is. So maybe y'all go look at some options. But I don't think we're going to be key. That's the thing. What's the ROI?
What was the return on investment? That's exactly.
Like if we're talking $100,000, well, that's the cost. That's the line item that we're talking about putting in there. But I know my other question is there something that already exists perhaps? And I know you turned over a lot of rocks to get this information, so thank you and staff for getting this. But like, does TML have something of that nature? I know they have comp studies and other things, but
I know they have like salary studies, but
He's still going control. Maybe not.
HJC does not have total compensation.
Total compensation is just salary.
can we just find out what it would cost to have an outside before we decide it's too expensive? Can we at least figure out what that would cost?
We're going to do no compounding gap study. It's pretty relevant. We can look into that one, but I'm fairly confident in saying it's at least 6 figures. Would a longer run out where maybe it's not this budget year? Do you need more time to do it, or is it just doing it is a lot of work? I understand this is a lot of work. And gap is not something you can do. Really.
That's kind of what I was saying. Is I feel like that wouldn't be.
If you have to get Bob and Bob, it just make compensation.
And
You want to come back to this one, Berlin? There is the Texas Total Rewards Conference going on in Austin in August.
that sounds like a Chick-fil-A app conference, right?
At the Hyatt Regency. Right, that's actually might be worth doing before we pour money into a study. They may already give it to us. I think everybody's in agreement. This whatever new thing we come up with is going to be either employees hired after a certain date or employees that have been working here lower than a certain amount of time.
I would never target people that are about to retire. I think that's weird. That was never the intention. I thought I had made that clear, but if I have not, let me reiterate that.
There needs to be a grandfathering aspect, whether it's all employees or employees
Right.
tenure over a certain level, perhaps. But my explanation, I know that your statement, Austin, is whatever we're talking about, it's expensive. But my question is, well, how it's done. So, I mean, if you could at least get some folks, get some numbers,
You get a vote?
that would be helpful.
To get a real thing, we'd have to put out an RFQ and go that route, I would think. There's not a lot of consultants that do that. We'd want to compare their services and those kinds of things. We can, by getting a quote, I'm saying, like, we can find some cities that have done this recently. I don't know if anyone had a gap analysis, but we can find people that have done it recently and see if that's going to be comparable or not. But actually try and get a real decent quote. I think you'd have to go for an RFP for something like that. RFPs to pick your place, then you have to pick the place and then negotiate the contract. But But I don't know. I know one company that does these things, but I know they're popular in the press for what they've done in the county recently. Yeah, it might be good to see what we can get for a little while. Yeah. We can try and find out from other cities, but that's not gonna be their experience might be different from ours.
At this point, I would say see what you can find out and report back to council and see where we go from here.
Let's say as the suggestion, I think that's probably right. Is let's let them feel out and then let us know kind of what a cost might be if that's something we're going to RFQ with. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you everybody for coming out and listening, and being adjourned at 8:35.